My name is Linda Swanson, and we'll be talking about my brother today, David Lewis Matlock, who was in the Vietnam War.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could give me a little bit of background on him, uh, seeing that, you know, it was a very, it was a longer time ago or whatever, and different things you may have remembered. So, could you kind of tell me, like, when he joined, his age that he was when he entered, training, and what his specific duty was during the Vietnam War?
I believe he entered at about the age of 18 in 1965. The draft was not in full force yet in 1965, but they were drafting. So that's why I think basically he entered, is so he knew he was going to get drafted anyway. He went to boot camp like all military do, and then he was specialized in a scout, and he had a dog, a German Shepherd, and the dog's name was Rex, which took a lot of time to train the dog and for him to work with the dog. So the dog was actually his soldier with him.
Okay, how much training would you say that was needed for, like, how long of a period of time for boot camp and the training for the dog, would you say?
Well, I believe boot camp was probably 3 months, and I think the dog was at least 3 months also, because it takes a long time.
Okay, awesome. All right, so then we're gonna get into what he actually did. Could you explain to him? So you said he had a dog. What exactly was the purpose with the dog as far as pertained to the war?
Well, the dog was and him were scouts, and they would either lower them by helicopter or drop them off, and they would go looking for enemies, the enemy, and then radio back, and that was their job.
Okay, would you say that I know that in our modern day in our modern day age, dogs are used for that, but they're also used for bomb sniffing. Did you know, was it also used a lot for bomb sniffing and such?
Well, I'm not quite sure. There wouldn't be bombs, there would be mines.
Okay.
The Vietnamese were very cunning. They had all kinds of different ways, doing things.
Okay, awesome. Uh, could you give like a story example of what you may have, like an event that happened to him that was pretty huge as pertained to him and his dog?
Him and his dog were out one day, and the dog hit a mine, and the mine blew. Of course, blew. The dog was killed, and my brother was uh, injured quite a bit with shrapnel in the lower part of his body. His lower legs
Okay.
were injured with shrapnel.
All right. Did that how would you say that affected him as far as physically and mentally, would you say?
Well, mentally, I think it was very hard on him because he loved the dog. The dog was his partner.
Yeah.
And the dog did have a military funeral. He was able to stay there for the military funeral, and then he was transferred to Germany, to a hospital in Germany.
How long was he there for that?
The hospital, I want to say like 6 months maybe.
So it was a pretty long recovery
Right,
time.
and they could not remove the shrapnel, and I don't remember exactly why, but they could not remove it.
So what was there, because as a result of not being able to remove the shrapnel, was he did that affect, like, was it, because I know sometimes if you get certain injuries it doesn't openly affect you, but did this affect him in his returning to his duties and such?
Well, it did, yes, because he had to keep his legs up about 4 hours a day so he didn't lose them. He had terrible poor circulation at the lower part of his extremities, so he had to keep his legs up about 4 hours a day.
Okay. What, he wasn't able to go back into combat
No,
or anything because
no,
of that, right?
no. And he was in Germany after he was out of the hospital. He was a military police.
Okay.
Yeah, they kept him there for that.
All right. Okay, so next I'm going to ask you about after the war. Um, could you touch a little bit on the Vietnam War? Is a very known to be very famous for it's very two-sided. There's debates about it still. Could you explain, as far as recognition that he got, or how he was treated as a result of being a soldier in Vietnam?
Actually, to tell you the truth, there was no recognition for them at all. war protesters were pretty active at the time, and they called it a war at first, and then they changed it to a conflict afterwards, but they were not recognized, and still to this day, the Vietnam vets are not recognized or honored or treated fair at all.
No. Okay. What effects did that have on him uh, as far as just returning to normal civilian life after he was brought home, like things such as a job or any part of his mental or physical state? How would you say all this affected him?
Well, you yourself, you go defend your country and go on, actually, you're more front lines than the soldiers coming behind you. You go ahead and do that, and then you come home and you're treated bad, like you're the bad guy. I mean, emotionally, that was very devastating for him, very devastating.
Yeah. Well, did it have any? So, I also want to touch here, but did it have any effects on his relationships through life? Did it affect did that end the war and did it cause any other problems for him?
Well, sure, he became less happy-go-lucky and kind of stoic and kind of, I don't know, kind of bigoted and prejudiced. He was never that way before, so I don't know what happened there with that, but that was his personality when he came back. And he also, drugs and alcohol were very prominent in his life.
Would you say that would be the result of PTSD?
I think yes, and I think that was not recognized then. The government did not do anything or recognize that.
Yeah.
At all.
Okay. All right. Also, what did he die of? I know that he died young.
He was 50 and he died of Agent Orange, and he had went to Mayo Clinic. His only symptoms were that he was very fatigued. A blood test was done in the town he lived in, and he was sent to Mayo Clinic. And he had all these tests, and all the doctors and him sat around the table, and there was just nothing they could do for him. He was just full of cancer, and any treatment would have just made it worse. So there was not a thing they could do for him. And he was 50 when he died, so he was very young. But Agent Orange, again, was something that the government did not recognize. They started to recognize it about the time he died. So he filled out paperwork, which went to the government, which went to the VA, and in the event his children or grandchildren would have something wrong, with them. So at least there was a record of it.
Okay. Would you say that because of his job as a scout that would be lowered in before the main troops, would you say that his cancerous effects from Agent Orange would be the result of that because he was in there recently?
Oh, sure,
after it had been sprayed?
They sprayed the fields, and then they'd send. He's the only one with Agent Orange, believe me. They'd spray. They'd go with a plane and spray to kill the foliage so they could see the enemy, and then they would send these guys out right away, So, I'm sure that Agent Orange came from the government.
Okay. Would you say that the Agent Orange, would you say that affected also his probably PTSD, considering that he was deteriorating from cancer? And would you say that affected also his mental state on top of everything else he had been through coming home from the war?
Oh, certainly. You can't do what he did and come back and have people treat you that way and feel normal. I mean, none of us would feel that way. It was just an awful thing, and it's unfortunate that he was in that era. That happened to him.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem.